So thank you all for joining us and starting your week off with us here at the OLC. My name is Jen Bloom, and I'm the director of the Oakland Literacy Coalition. For those of you that do not know us at the Oakland Literacy Coalition, we are a small nonprofit with a really big mission, which is right here. At the heart of everything that we do is a simple but powerful belief that literacy is liberation. And at the OLC, we know that literacy is the gateway skill to all other learning. And we need to be the bridge, not the gatekeeper. So our work is rooted in equity and social justice. Too many of our Black, brown, multilingual, neurodivergent, and low-income children face barriers that really aren't about ability, it's about access. So our work here centers on convening and sharing free resources and tools. We build capacity of educators and community members that are doing really important work with our youngest readers, and we serve as a bridge between home and school and the community and all champions of literacy. And so for those of you that are joining us from outside California, just want to kind of level set that this year in California, we're excited to finally join many other states and are now required to administer a reading risk screener for all kindergartners, first and second graders at least once a year from one of four approved screeners, Amira, M-Class, Dibbles Lectura, Roar, or Multitudes. And this law ensures that students are identified and can get the support they need before falling behind. But adopting a screener, training staff, administering, interpreting the results, and considering what type of instructional support or intervention is needed is a huge lift. And that's why we at the OLC are really thrilled to have Dr. Archie here with us to unlock the power of screener data with us. Next slide, please. So before I let Dr. Archie introduce herself, I just wanted to say what a pleasure it is for us at the OLC to welcome Dr. Archie. In my 30 plus years in education, I can't tell you how inspiring it is to really collaborate with such a true exemplar of being a learning leader. Dr. Archie brings such deep expertise and heart to the work of advancing literacy. Even though she's joining us, y'all, from New York City, she's a proud Bay Area native, and she's from a family of educators, including her mom and auntie who joined us last year at the Literacy and Justice for All Symposium, and I hope they'll be with us again this year. So with more than 26 years of experience in education from pre-K to adult, like I said, she brings a wealth of experience and such a generous spirit to every space she's in. She will be speaking at the symposium again this year. So without further ado, Dr. Archie, we are so thrilled to have you here with us. Everyone, please join me in welcoming Dr. Renata Archie.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And I'm going to switch over to my slides. One second. And
So we'll stop sharing the slides and that way you can share. There we go.
yes. So I'm very happy to be here. Um, and just a little bit quickly about me, and we're going to jump into everything. We're going to cover a lot of ground today. I'm happy to be here. I saw the registration and saw people from California. I saw folks from my district here. So I'm excited. A little bit about me. My mom, I do come from a family of educators as a retired a teacher, music teacher, administrator, and I now work a bit in higher ed as well as my day job, which is with the New York City Public Schools as a district lead, where I support my small district in Brooklyn with all things MTSS, literacy, and assessment. I have my own consulting business where I also get to work at the state level, which is very exciting. And I most of my career spent as a kindergarten teacher. So this is you'll see why I'm so passionate about early literacy screening. I'm a native of California, And I also have a son who's 20 years old and he's just started his third year at USC down in Southern California. So today we are going to cover a lot of ground as briskly as Anita Archer briskly as we can. We're going to make sure we understand the framework that is MTSS, where these screeners that we use, where those fit right inside. We'll do a little touch on the different kinds of assessments that we use in the classroom, the characteristics of a screener. We'll talk about the measures and what we're measuring, the kinds of response patterns you might see, and the components of a benchmark score. We'll do a little touch on something called the instructional hierarchy and talk about, I know everyone is probably a different role. You may be in the classroom, outside of the classroom, you may be supporting teachers or leaders. So we'll make sure that we have you leave with some good questions and topics for talking about screener data and the implications, the kinds of activities that can support a child. So let's get started. I wish we were in person, but we are on Zoom. So I'm trying to keep it as engaging as possible. We'll have some choral responses. I know we're in different rooms all over the country, but we'll have closed readings. So I may read some and you may read the bold. Don't worry. No one will hear you talking to yourself. We're going to do a few breakout rooms where we share, where we help define terms with each other, and at the end reflect. I have a stop and jot note catcher if I know everyone has their way of keeping up with the information. So I laid it out. It follows the presentation. If it's helpful, please use it or your own way, and maybe we'll use some gestures while we're going through the presentation. So our agenda, first stop, we're going to ground ourselves in our why, which is very important, and Jen already mentioned some of that why. We are going to talk about MTSS very briefly. Then we'll get into the components of a screener. Towards the end, we're going to talk about considerations for when we look at that data and we're thinking about what we can do to support a K-2 student. And at the very end, we'll reflect on all that we covered and professionally as a person, what your next steps might be that will help you empower yourself to help a student. So our handouts are here, and Jen or Annette will probably drop this in. There's the defining guide. So I'm going to do a quick touch and you look at the defining guide, which was published by the Reading League a few years ago. There's a little cheat sheet that one of my classmates that I went to school with created that helps you understand in a brief glance the 4 different types of assessments we use. I put the benchmark goals for DIBELS in there, and I realized some people on the call, you may use DIBELS, you may use Acadians, everything we talk about today applies. You'll see 2 helpful handouts about the instructional hierarchy, and then a resource sheet that I put together for educators, parents, with some quick links. Okay, so the purpose of today, and I do this when I support my principals and teachers in my day job, there's so many terms, and we say, could it be that in our different places in the corner of this country that we have different understandings of these terms? Yes. Different depths of knowledge about them. So the fact that you're here, I'm so excited because for us, we don't have school today, so that you're learning. If you're off today, on your day off, it shows your commitment to getting this right for our students. All right, so the context. There's a great friend that I'm sure all of you in California know well, and all of you who've been in this literacy world. You're probably familiar with Kareem Weaver. A few years ago, he presented at a conference, an online conference for Pennsylvania, and I heard this quote and it stuck with me. So you can do a closed read where you read the bold part. Today, literacy has become the modern day Mason-Dixon line, which is inextricably linked to securing economic, social, physical, and familial health. So just to ground ourselves in how important this is to get it right for our students, I'm going to show you a little quick glimpse of some data that you're probably familiar with, but whether you support teachers or you have a classroom or it's parents you're talking to understand what we have before us. So we know that students who are not reading proficiently by grade 4 are far more likely to struggle in school and life. I didn't put the New York data here, but my friends from New York, I can get it to you. What I did is put together our national public, which we probably are familiar with. And I put California for us to understand that we have a lot of work to do, but the point is we can do it, especially coming together in spaces like this. One big understanding that I like to share also, we have what we call that prison, the school to prison pipeline. But for me, in talking to colleagues, it starts in tier 1. So what we're talking about today is very important and can stop um, numbers like this. So I do have California and New York here, and at a glance, you can see the population of a group of people being a small percent, whereas their total number incarcerated or in prison is much larger. So we know that we don't want to see that, and we know that. One second, I think there's someone unmuted. Can hear some background noise. So we know that sadly, 85% of the juveniles, children who encounter the court system are functionally illiterate and 60% of prison inmates. But it is not possible for all these children and adults to actually have reading actual reading difficulties. A lot of this started in our tier 1, and it's something that we could have prevented. So in the chat, very quickly, I know you know the answer to this question. Just type it, don't push enter. How many children, given evidence-based instruction and use of data, can learn to read? 50, 75, 80, or 95%? Give you a second to type it and push enter. Let's see. I see 95 everywhere. Yes. So we know that. And so though that is something that should encourage us to know that if we do this right, if we collaborate well, um, we can make this happen. And I have another beautiful quote on the next slide for you. So yes, 95% of our students can become skilled readers. This is Kimiona Burke, and I'm sure you've heard of the work that happened, that has been done and is still going on in Mississippi. They started this work earlier than many of our states, and it has been a long journey, a hard journey. But what they did was when they started, they were almost 49th or 50th in the country. And with using MTSS, with using screeners, with training, and all of the work that it takes, they have moved themselves to number 9 in the country. So you can read this all together. Illiteracy is one of the most solvable issues of our time. And that is very powerful. And even though we have a lot of work, even though the data might be discouraging, understand that the work is being done and successfully if we all come together and collaborate. And I'd say learn from the barriers. There's people who have been in this work longer, and if we listen to each other and share like we're doing today, we can get it right. Okay, so let's get started. One thing I'll say, because I just mentioned that learning from other states, learning from others' journey. What understanding what MTSS is another whole nother presentation. And when I come to Oakland, I am going to speak a lot more about what MTSS is all about. But starting with this understanding is very important. So California rolling out screeners and having schools choose one, it's very important that schools start their understanding with MTSS and knowing what that screener is a part of the bigger picture. Okay, so we're just doing a very brief touch on it today. But please take some time, and I'm going to leave you at the end with some professional resources that are good. So MTSS, it's a framework that we use it's a whole wraparound system in a school building that we use to deliver evidence-based practices and make sure that all students have what they need. In your handouts, and you can take a look later, we're going to just look at this very briefly. I put together 2 pages of the defining guide for you to take a look at. And these these little snippets come from there. And I kind of bolded the very important parts that stuck out to me. Um, Basically, it's a framework that is going to make sure we are efficiently targeting everything using universal screeners. One of the most important things is that we're going to meet the needs of the vast majority of students. So that makes sure that we don't have large numbers of students still needing support, which overwhelms our system. And rather than waiting for students to fall behind, we're being preventative and proactive. So when you have a chance later on, take a quick read of this if you're unfamiliar with the MTSS framework. The components of it, and you'll understand when I go to my next slide, there's many components to an MTSS system. The first one, the continuum of supports, and we'll take a look at that briefly on the next slide, which that just describes all of the instructional support we're providing our students. The next is a comprehensive assessment system, and we'll take a look at what's involved in that. And strategic leadership and teaming structures, those that's the glue that keeps it together. The database decision making that's happening across all of those components. And then there's targeted professional learning for all things, and obviously ongoing communication with the community and family. So I'm going to take a look quickly at the continuum of supports because screeners do tell us a lot about the health of this piece of MTSS. And then we're going to jump into the assessments. So very briefly, I'm sure you've seen this triangle everywhere to describe to describe our instruction. Tier 1 is the instruction that all students receive. No one is supposed to be pulled from tier 1 to receive anything else. All students are supposed to receive it, and it's not necessarily whole group. It should be differentiated and based on students' needs. This support should be strong, high quality, and robust enough to make sure at least 80%, a large portion of students, meet expectations. Screeners are an assessment that help us understand how well we did with this instruction, if that makes sense. Next, there will be students that may need another touch with tier 1 material. They may need additional support, strategic support, and that is our tier 2 instruction. And that is supposed to be as strong enough to get another 15 to 20% of students to meet expectations. And last, there may be students who are not responding as well as we'd like or as quickly as we'd like to tier 1 or tier 2, and they may receive intensive, individualized, or very small group instruction. So that was a very, very fast touch on the continuum, but I wanted to show that to you because it gets more intense as the smaller the group and the bigger the need. But if it works in the way I describe, you end up not overwhelming your system and being able to provide most of what children need in tier 1 in the perfect world. And we know we're not in the perfect world, but that's our goal, to get it right. Okay, so screener data, we collect lots of different information in our school building. And as a teacher, I remember being confused and I didn't understand. I just was doing things out of compliance, like, oh, they said I have to do this, I just do it. So I'm glad we're at a point now where we are getting a deeper understanding of what are all these things that we're collecting. And screener data is very important and rich, and different assessments tell us different things. No assessment tells us everything. So the handout I gave you will break down some of this for you to share with your school community. We know the goal of any assessment is to read that out loud, improve student outcomes, right? So we want to make sure whatever we're doing makes sense. We're not wasting our own time, a child's time. And that's something we don't want to overassess. We want to make sure whatever we're doing makes sense. So we have two types of assessments. One, there's assessments for learning that can help instruction right now, tomorrow. And then there's assessment of learning that will tell us what have we done? Did we meet what we thought we would? It measures the impact of our instruction. And I'm going to show you the little categories and you can see it on the handout I gave you. So first, this is the star of the day, screeners. They can tell us who might need additional support in general. We have diagnostics. When we need more information, I need to know exactly what kind of support this student needs. Progress monitoring. So when I am providing some additional support, it lets me know, is it working? Is it causing growth? Do I need to make a change? So those are the ones that help us inform our instruction. And the last one, which is outcome or summative assessment, if you think of that state test or end of unit or end of module assessment. All right. That's not necessarily something I'm going to use every day to tell me how a student is doing. So when I saw this, it helped me, it made a lot of sense to me. So in terms of screening, the purpose of it, and we'll do a closed read, the purpose of it, first grade reading is what? Predictive of future
Future
reading outcomes. Yes, you can open up the microphone if you like. It helps us identify what a child,
knows and which skills may need
focused attention. Thank you. Identification of students who are what?
at risk,
And may.
need additional support,
support.
Good. And what does it do? It's foundational skill instruction is,
more effective
Effective
reading intervention.
that's a big one. So if we catch it early, we can make sure we're not intervening later. Next, screening is,
Key to preventing reading difficulties.
great. Screening data are used to make,
Important decisions,
yes. Screening,
lays the
Lays the
foundation
foundation for
responsive
responsive and differentiated instruction.
excellent. And the last one, universal screening helps all stakeholders ensure that,
All students receive early needs-based.
needs-based support.
awesome. Good to hear voices. We can feel like we're together in a room. So all of these things, screeners are awesome. They give us so much information and help us prevent later issues when we talk about how our fourth graders are doing in the country. I know a lot of my schools have periods for the grade 3 to 5, and we're trying to intervene when trouble has already happened. So if we use these well in our early grades, we're going to be spot on. Oop, I had one more. It reflects on
Systemic issues
and
Help
of tier 1
in
instruction.
instruction.
all right. So that's a big one, because if my tier 1 is not robust enough, it is not high quality enough, your screener is going to show that. If I see a large percentage of my first graders struggling with a specific skill, it doesn't mean that my first graders can't do that skill. It has something to do with what I'm delivering or how I'm delivering it. All right.
Dr. Archie, just
yeah.
just on that note, there was a question in the chat that I think gets back to what you just said about solid tier 1.
Mm-hmm.
Ian asked, how do these percentage of tiers relate to the percentage of kids that actually are reading at grade level? Shouldn't more kids get tier 2 if less than 50% of students in California are below grade level?
Oh, that's a good one, and something I present about. So, all right. If I look at my data and I see more than 20% of my students are struggling with a skill, I need to look at what tier? Tier 1. And so I know it's hard to hear. We go into schools. I see some of my colleagues and hear them on the call. We go into our schools, we look at the data, which we just finished collecting, and we'll see 65, 70% of first graders struggling with phoneme segmentation. That does not mean that's a small group situation. That means everybody needs this vitamin. That is a very like hair on fire moment. Every first grader needs to come in doing that skill very well. And if I'm not, that's what my screener is telling me. Do not pass go. What do you call it? Like, do not move until you address that because it's going to now feed forward issues for that child to become a fluent reader. So if you have a huge number, and it is the reality, and I know it hurts our heart. but it's like it's a sobering moment for our leaders. Our leaders need to understand too. There's certain skills that are predictive and we have to get them right. If we don't, and that's why I'm kind of moving so fast, because I want to get to that point where we're talking about what kind of practice or what kind of instruction makes sure the child is moving forward with fluency and mastery of this skill. And that's what this is all about. So that's a great question, Ian. Okay, so quickly, the characteristics, you don't have to close read this. I'm just going to pop it out so we can keep it moving. When we talk about what a screener is, and some of you probably will have a little spidey sense knowing why I'm emphasizing this, because you're going to go places that say they're using a screener, but if it's not defined like this, you should be an informed critical consumer. Okay, so it's administered to all students, not just some. I have people I've heard say, oh, can I just give it to the students I think are struggling? No, you may not. It needs to be done 3 times a year because it's giving you very important information. I say that because I've heard states that wanted to do it once or twice, and you can see that could be problematic. Standardized, meaning it is delivered the same way to me, to Jen, to Annette. It's valid and reliable, meaning I can trust that it's collecting what it says it does, and it's going to give a consistent outcome. If I deliver it, if Jennifer does it, any assessor does it, it's going to give a consistent result. It has research-based benchmarks and cut points we're going to talk about later. It's brief, meaning it doesn't take 60 to 90 minutes. It takes probably 5 or 1. And it's repeatable and sensitive. It's an indicator of predictive skills, which we're going to talk about, and it's administered by a trained adult. I emphasize that because we had trouble with that in my parts, making sure everyone is well trained, because if they're not, we can't rely on it. And that it has students produce responses. That's a really big one. So I'm sure you know of assessments that don't necessarily allow a child to produce a response. So just understand we're measuring fluency of really important skills. So we want to see a child and feel a child do the skill. All right. I'm going to skip 2 slides because I just talked through those. And either we can blurt or we can put in the chat. Maybe we'll just blurt. All right. So the first one, a universal screener is a brief assessment that is something and something. I know I just breezed through that. You might not have caught that. That's not a good teacher. All right, everybody. It's valid and reliable. I went quickly. And it's administered to who? How many?
All.
Thank you. All students. How many times a year?
3.
3.
Thank you. It measures something literacy skills that are something of later reading outcomes. It's okay. You can say it. Essential literacy skills, and we're going to talk about it in a second, that are predictive. And it can tell me what a child knows. Yep. And which skills need. It could be your own words.
Improvement.
Yes, thank you. Any word you want. So it's going to tell me what a child knows so it's going to give me an indication of there's trouble over here. All right. And it's going to identify students who are at risk.
Risk.
Yep. And may need additional support. All right. And that last thing that we saw earlier, which it helps me reflect on systemic issues and the health of tier 1. Okay, so this is the value of a screener, and we're going to probably skip the stop and jot for time's sake. Yes. All right. So later on, when you have a chance, if you want to email me, I'll give you my email address. If there's anything that you're wondering about, don't worry. You can send an email. All right. We're going to talk quickly about those predictive skills, what they are. There's lots of different reading skills, but there's specific ones that research has told us they are predictive. If we teach them explicitly and give targeted opportunities for practice, we can improve outcomes for kids. All right. I'm assuming knowledge of this in this room right now. Um, the simple view of reading, which tells us a bit about the components that give us reading comprehension, which is the goal. So we have those code-based skills, and then we have the language-based language comprehension that I can recognize words and get them off the page, that I have language enough to understand them, will make sure that I can read and understand what I've read. The other model, this is one of the theoretical models. The other model by Hollis Scarborough, she actually calls a visual metaphor, is the reading rope. And she created this. She created this to help explain to parents how skilled reading is accomplished. The biggest misconception I hear people think about is that they should be focusing on one or the other, whereas in the early grades, we are focused on all of them. All of these things are happening at once. We're developing language, we're developing their understanding of how to read words from learning letters and sounds. And that gets increasingly strategic and more fluent to the point that we are able to read well in second grade and beyond. More often than not, where we get struggling readers is when these skills are not as fluent as we'd like, and it creates effortful reading. There are times that we do have language-based disabilities. So not disregarding that, but most of the time we haven't taught this well or made sure students are fluent enough to get to this point. Okay, so that's just an understanding when we talk about fluency. To understand constrained and unconstrained. There are skills that we learn and we get them well, and we do not have to learn much about them anymore. All right. There are skills they start when we are born or before, and they continue to even today. I'll learn a new word. All right. So unconstrained language skills continue to grow even as adults. So, in terms of the skills that are essential, phonemic awareness, do you want to jot it in the chat or just unmute and tell me what is phonemic awareness? What is that skill? What am I able to do? Go ahead. You want to put it in the chat or you can just unmute and say it.
You're able to manipulate sounds and words.
Yes. You have an awareness. Thank you. Yes. Awareness of the spoken sounds in words and manipulate them. So spoken words and speak sounds. Anybody want to take a stab at describing what the alphabetic principle or phonics, just a quick, concise definition? It's okay if you're shy. I'm going to click it. So that's the system of sound and symbol relationships. So understanding that a symbol represents a speech sound and can be written. And then we have the combinations, all the different spelling patterns that we learn that are associated. So we have from basic to advanced phonics and morphology. All right. Accuracy and fluency with connected text. Is my ability to accurately, with an appropriate rate and expression, read. So that's something we measure. And then reading comprehension, which is my ability to extract and construct meaning. So those are, when we talk about the essential skills that a screener would measure that tell us something about a student's later outcomes, these are the skills. And if your school, so I know Oakland is using Amplify, right? Dibbles 8th edition. And I'll tell you very briefly. Folks here in New York use Acadians. Just so you understand, from 20 years ago or however long ago, it's all was one assessment, one group of researchers at the University of Oregon. Fast forward to now, I won't tell you, there's no problem. I worked very closely with some of the researchers who used to work there and created all of this. So everybody's still friends, but they're just different reasons right now. You have two. So doesn't matter which one you're looking at, they both are very similar. All right, so the measures that Dibbles has, and Acadians I'll show you on the next screen, are as follows to capture those essential skills. First, you have phonemic awareness for Dibbles, and they capture phoneme segmentation fluency. Do we want to unmute quickly and someone describe what phoneme segmentation fluency might be? Go ahead. It's okay if you're shy. I'm not good at wait time. Go ahead, Kieran.
So it's the ability to segment the sounds that you see in a word. For example, the word cat, and you're able to see the grapheme and represent each sound that's attached to the grapheme to read the word cat. So cat would be k, at.
Thank you. All right. So the fluency with which a child can do what Kieran just described, they get all of these measures are 1 minute. So they're this one they're not seeing anything because it's phonemic awareness. You're going to present them a word, like Kieran said, and the child is going to segment it, and then they get another one and another one. All right. The next one that measures rapid naming ability, letter naming, simple. There's a sheet of letters. The child has 60 seconds to name, and this is very predictive of later reading outcomes. All right. I always tell teachers to make sure they take note. This is not a letter sound inventory. This is fluency, but to take note of confusions and everything. We're going to talk about response patterns in a second. All right, nonsense words. That's my favorite. Who wants to tell us what nonsense words are all about? Nonsense word fluency, anybody?
So they're words that follow typical decodable patterns in English, and you're checking to see if the students can blend or recode words that would not be words that they may already have memorized or have part of their sight word vocabulary.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you, Ashley. That was awesome. So I love this measure, and it's probably the most misunderstood that yeah, I'm sure you've experienced parents wondering, like, what is this? It's one that we want to make sure teachers are not trying to teach it. So if I'm teaching children well enough in tier one and giving them enough practice with decoding, I should be able to, like Ashley said, give them a nonsense word and they decode. So lots of information comes from this assessment. That's great for us. All right. Dibbles has one assessment that Acadians doesn't have, which is called word reading fluency. Reading fluency has some high frequency words and decodable words, and it's similarly set up 1 minute long, and the student needs to read as many words as they can. And then we have oral reading fluency. Does anyone want to talk about oral reading fluency quickly? This is good for you guys to use your voices to explain them. It's okay if not. All right, oral reading fluency, the student is going to have the opportunity to read 3 different passages. It's for 1 minute, and they have the opportunity to retell. You're going to capture how many words are correct, and you're going to also capture how many words are correct, and then how many errors, which tells you their fluency. It's interesting, and we'll talk about the kinds of responses you might see on that. Maze, anyone want to describe that one? What is maze? How is it set up?
So that's a comprehension that's set up like a closed passage almost where they'll be reading along and then there will be a word missing, and in a box there will be a choice between 3 words for them to choose from. And that's a 3-minute long test.
Yes. Thank you. So 3 minutes, and it's not as simple as it sounds. I always tell parents and even leaders that the child is reading along and has to hold meaning in their memory and make a decision about the word and then keep going along. So it is a high level of comprehension that they need to exhibit. All right. So Acadians, very similar. I'm not going to go through them. The difference with Acadians is it actually has first sound fluency, which is the prerequisite skill to phoneme segmentation. So first sound, a student needs to hear a word and be able to just say the first sound that they heard. And it doesn't include the word reading. All right, so response patterns. I'm going to want to hear your voices quickly too. With first sound fluency, if a child were to need to tell me the first sound that they heard in a word, what are some of the things that might happen that might go well or might not go well? Anybody want to unmute?
A lot of the times they might just tell you the word back to you.
Yes. Uh-huh. They might just repeat the word back to you. So that tells me they don't have phonemic awareness probably. Some other things, they might show partial awareness and give you a piece of the word, right? What about letter naming fluency? I kind of said some stuff earlier. Letter naming, what are some things that could go just fine and then some things that would be concerning?
They might give you the letter name or they might give you the letter sound.
Okay. Yes. And there may be hesitations. So these rules are the same on both of the assessments I mentioned. So if a student is hesitating more than 3 seconds, we encourage them to move along. And all of this is information that informs instruction. There may be common confusions, and we know the letters that a lot of times students may confuse because of how they appear. Phoneme segmentation, and I'm going to zoom through to nonsense words in a second. Some things that may go wrong with phoneme segmentation. Uh, Same thing as Ashley said earlier, repeating the word. They could give us chunks of the word. They could add sounds or have random errors. A lot of good information comes from this to tell us where a child might be with this skill. All right, word reading. I'm going to zoom through that and then let you guys talk about nonsense words. Word reading, they may sound out the word, they may omit sounds or have substitutions. They may use some decoding strategies or not. They may read the word out of order. It may be slow and labored, very similar to what can happen with oral reading fluency. So nonsense words, I'm not going to click it. Somebody else can pipe in and tell me what kinds of information or what kind of response patterns might you see with nonsense words?
You may see students segment the words and then read the whole word. You may see errors with the vowel, middle sound, students not hearing the middle or the ending sound, or some response pattern would be students still do onset and rhyme, like the Hegedy strategies.
Yes. Awesome. That's great. And that's all of that is information. Everything that Karen just described is information about where a student might be with their ability to fluently decode a CVC word. All right, so errors with certain sound letters, recoding out of order, all of those things are information. And if you are in a position to deliver this assessment, or if you are in the position to coach or talk to teachers, just encourage them to take notes because it's in the moment, in the 1 minute, a lot of things are happening. It's very rich. So as soon as you finish, just say, hold on 1 moment, and then type some notes, write the notes because it will help you form your groups later. You'll find students with very similar needs. All right, oral reading fluency, I'm gonna go quickly. So time is moving along. There may be accurate phrasing, intonation, and punctuation or not. I've had students just read a passage and blow through punctuation and look up at me and not have any idea what they've read. So lots of information coming through here. They may, same thing, using decoding strategies or not, certain types of errors. I think the biggest thing we see in upper grades, I know we're talking about K-2 today, are certain types of words, multisyllabic words, okay? I am going to, and I'll send this to you. I can send you some screenshots of this or put it in the folder I gave you. This is just, I know we maybe have some folks with second grader up. Just understanding when a student, their words correct per minute. So if they are meeting benchmark with that, there's things we may want to explore with them in terms of comprehension, but the different combinations where a student might be reading slowly and accurately and need some fluency practice, or a student that may not be reading accurately, meaning they may be reading too fast. So they're reading enough, but not accurately. And then in this situation where the student is reading slowly and inaccurately. So all of these different things can come out of oral reading fluency. And so that's just a quick pass at them. When it comes to scoring, so all of those measures we just looked at, from phoneme segmentation, every single one of them, you get a score. So I know I sit in meetings and I hear people say the red kids or the blue kids and the green kids. So very quickly, we want to say what a benchmark score is grabbing for us. It's not giving us just a color. It's giving us a skill. So it's in relation to one of those things we just mentioned, letter naming, or it's also in relation to being above benchmark, at benchmark, below, or well below. And we want to use that terminology rather than colors. And it's a point in time. It's at the beginning of the year, right now in the fall, or it's January, February, or the end of the year. So this is really important to understand when we talk about a student who's above benchmark and we say, what do they need? They should continue with their high quality core instruction that they are getting in whole and small group. They have a 90 to 99% chance of meeting later benchmark with that skill. A student, this is the most controversial score. People don't all the way understand. At benchmark does not mean I'm okay. Green doesn't mean, great. I'm meeting. We have to pay attention. I'm going to show you the grid, and I put it in your handout folder for you to understand. At benchmark, I could be very close to that cut point for risk. And if my teacher thought I was green and I was okay and doesn't pay attention to me in January and we do the assessment again, I might be below. Okay. So 70 to 85% probability of meeting a later outcome is not as great as above. So we should be heading towards the above benchmark at all times to make sure our instruction does that. Below benchmark, 40 to 60% probability. I need strategic support. I want to pay a lot of attention and make sure I'm giving specific skill practice to this student. And then the last one, well below, is a dire need, 10 to 20% probability, and I need intensive support. So one thing, and I know it's another workshop entirely, when it comes to progress monitoring or what do I do, when I'm below benchmark, my focus can't be several of these skills. There's a specific one that I might be meeting. So maybe I'm doing well with phoneme segmentation fluency, but my struggle is on the next skill, nonsense word, if that makes sense. So we have to be very clear and specific with students. We can't try to address many skills at once. There is one particular one that is a precursor to another that we want to make sure that we get them right on their toes, if that makes sense. Okay. So when I said that those cut points, the way Dibbles shows their cut points and benchmarks are on these grids. And so you can see what the goal might be with the bolded numbers. That's that cut point. And if you fall below it, then you're falling into the below category. All right, so you can explore that another time. If you are using Amplify, some of the reports come back. This is clearer for you to see. This is a sample grade 1. And they show you what the goal is above. And you can see a student here. This is phoneme segmentation. And we talked about being green. This student has a 33, but that means they're very close to being below. All right. So those are the kinds of nuances you want to talk about. And at the end of the session, I'm going to have a list of questions. You can snap a picture of it. When you talk to a student's teacher or you're meeting with your colleagues and planning for groups, you want to pay attention to these nuances instead of just bunching students together and thinking they're meeting the mark because it's green. Okay. So that's in your handout folder. And if you are Acadians, folks, I can, at the end when it's question time, I can drop you the one for Acadians. It's very similar. And let's see what time it is. It's 3 o'clock. You guys are 3, 2, 1. It's 12 o'clock for you guys in California. What I wanted to do, I know I breezed through a lot just now. I was going to send you to breakout rooms. I think we can still for maybe 2 minutes. Yes, good. 2 or 3 minutes. What you're going to do is take any term. I know we have a broad range of experience in the room. Take any term that you want, and you're going to just define it for a peer. And if your partner, if you're in groups of 2 or 3, if they need support, adding more detail, you can support them in doing that. Okay. And the reason I'm doing this, I know this is a brief 90-minute workshop, but when you're with whether parents, other colleagues, leaders, and you want to be able to speak to something well, this is something that you can have them do, just this activity that I'm doing with you. The better we're able to define things for each other, the better we're able to speak to it, and we feel more confident. So, all right. So you're going to go to breakouts for about 2 or 3 minutes, and then we're going to come back and finish up.
Yeah, I think we are back
Mhm.
or getting there.
1 second. Yeah.
Okay. We are all back, Dr. Archie.
Okay. How did that go? Anybody want to chime in, and how did it go for you?
It went well. It was helpful to learn from the people that were in the room with me. And one was talking about activities she's doing with her students who are struggling, and then strategies that she's implementing to support them. And so we were able to brainstorm some ways that she could extend their learning, because she was saying how she's currently doing it. We're still having a hard time picking up on the skill.
Got it. All right. Anybody else want to talk about their breakout room experience? Okay. No problem. All right. Well, I actually did that. We called it a walk and squawk. I was actually presenting this last summer with Dr. Pam Kastner. And doing that, if you have the opportunity to deliver professional learning to adults, I know we just did that for 2 seconds, but incorporating that into your sessions with adults that are in person, it's really, just like students, we need time with information to process it, digest it, and be able to say it. The way if we're able to put it out of our mouth, it helps us understand it better. All right. So the last stretch, I wanted to share some information with you. Oh, I'm going to actually address one question that was in the chat when you were in breakout rooms. I was asked about rapid automatic naming, RAN. And so, yes, you're going to see Dibbles or Acadians, or some of your screeners will have some optional RAN assessments. And it gives you more predictive information about what a child can do. Rapid automatic naming is my ability. It could be colors, it can be letters, it helps you understand. It's a cognitive skill. But a student can have low RAN, and it can be an indicator of later reading disabilities or dyslexia. So but it's not something that we can teach, if that makes sense, but it's something, an indicator that can give you more information about where a student is. And I will actually reach out. I saw actually a good friend of mine who I graduated with signed up, but she didn't make it. She actually works for Acadians now, and she did her dissertation all on RAN. And so if there's some teacher friendly RAN information, I'm going to text her as soon as we get off, and I'll send it to Jen. so she can send it out to you guys, because it's an important thing to know that it's there, something that we can look into, and it gives us additional information, but there's a lot of misunderstanding around it or what to do with it. Okay. All right. So let's keep moving to considerations about fluency developing. So we all know this little, I'm just going to click right on through it. What happens if we do not get a solid footing with certain skills from kindergarten on? It ends up with a child not being able to read fluently and not wanting to do anything, have anything to do with reading. So that's what we're trying to avoid here. In terms of fluency developing, and all of those measures we talked about earlier are capturing fluency data for us, how well a child can do it. It develops starting at the letter, pattern, and then the word level. All right. And accuracy is the most important. So if I'm inaccurate, just like all of you guys described some of the responses I could have to one of those measures as a child, if I'm reading a nonsense word and I'm blending it, poof, right through, but the middle vowel is incorrect, I'm not fluent. I'm inaccurate. So there's something in the ingredients that's off. All right. So after that, we develop fluency from the word, phrase, and then the sentence level. So you can see it building, building, building until we are dealing with text. All right. Fluent, only then can fluent, effortless reading happen. When we talk about students, and when I read with a child that's in third, fourth, or fifth grade, and reading is effortful, or we've all experienced that before. What has happened? All of these prerequisite skills, we haven't gotten to that point yet. And so what's happening is my mind, all my cognitive resources are going to decoding or to putting that word together. And I can very barely allocate any resources to understanding what I've read. So that, I know you've experienced it before, but if you're in a position to describe this to another teacher, please do. This is interesting, and I have two resources in the folder for you to help you know. We're going to be talking basically about the first two on top. When I first interact with a skill, I'm just learning it. It is difficult, laborious. I am not accurate, and I'm not able to perform that skill reliably. So you can think about any of your students, whether you're in grade K or to 2. So yes, I expect a kindergartner to come to me with certain skills I just haven't learned yet. But apply this to a second grader in your mind, and maybe you did nonsense words, and maybe there's a lot of letters, sounds incorrect. Maybe they're unable to blend. So yet that child too is still in the acquisition stage. They're not decoding yet, but they're still in the acquisition stage of letter sound mastery, right? So think about that when you're thinking of a student that's struggling. The next phase, so once I'm more accurate now. I'm in this phase of trying to develop proficiency and fluency. I'm not at an acceptable rate yet. I'm more slow and halting with it. So you may see response patterns, and I know I've sat with some of my colleagues who I see on the call to look at response patterns of students and say, the student is doing the skill, they have phonemic awareness, or I see this student, like Kieran noted, saying the sounds and then blending it. They know what it is, but they're just not able to do it at the pace or the way that we'd like. So this is very important to talk about when you say, what does a child need to practice right now? Or how does a child need to practice? I'm not going to spend too much time with the generalization. That's when now I know how to do it and I can move it to other scenarios. So maybe I learned AI, long A pattern, and I learned AY, and I'm blending, and I can do the skill in other contexts, or I need practice doing that. Adaptation is when I can do that well. All right. So Like I said, we are more focused on these two today because when we look at screener data and we talk about students who are struggling, or we're saying lots of first graders are struggling with this, those are the two areas that we're thinking about. I'm going to just have you take a picture of this slide and the next one. This is just more information I put together for you to understand what kind of practice, blocked practice. When I'm in the acquisition stage, I don't need to be popping all around doing different things. I need very focused block practice with that skill. And then you can take a picture of this next slide. The fluency proficiency stage, what kind of practice I might need. That's where I can deal with two different spelling patterns, and I'm just developing fluency. All right, so before I'm going to move on to show you a few different considerations of activities. And I have my fine print slide. One second, I'm just going to click it all together. There's no magic or quick fix. All right. Matching the appropriate practice to a student's instructional need can be complex. So I'm saying all that to say that I'm telling you things today, but when you sit with your students, when you sit with your colleagues and you're looking at data, it's complex and you're going to talk about your students. So nothing I'm saying is going to be like, oh, I'm going to go do this tomorrow. The conversations are needed. You want to make sure that you are fortifying. Oops, sorry. We're helping students to get stronger and not making them more confused. So one thing we want to do is make sure whatever routines that a student is using or whatever terminology, we want to make sure we continue that and don't introduce other things. So when it comes to phonemic awareness and what kind of struggles a student might be having, I'm going to just click on through here. There's lots of activities. I don't know what programs everyone has, but I know that there's a program we have here that has lots of activities that are phonemic awareness. Are all of them giving me the same value? Are all of them focused on, like, I'd say the big money moves? Not necessarily. So we know that there's addition and deletion and substitution and all sorts of fancy things that a student can do when they have strong phonemic awareness. But if I have a student who's struggling, I want to get them to the phoneme level. I want to make sure that kindergartner, are they good at just identifying first sound? Great. Can they segment and blend cleanly? Great. So those are the things I want to make sure they are getting practice doing. All right. Later on, once they can do that, they will be able to do all those other skills, but those other skills aren't the ones that have the research behind them telling me that it's predictive of their later reading outcomes. Okay. So some of the things, you guys have said things before. Some of the segmenting are fine. Segmenting activities, phoneme graphing mapping activities. One thing I keep mentioning Dr. Kastner, because I've been presenting with her a lot lately, is she says, integrate, don't isolate. So a long time ago, folks used to say, oh, phonemic awareness, it stays by itself. It's a skill that underlies others. So I'm not just walking around the street knowing how to be aware of phonemes. I need to read. So I need to, as soon as I can, pair that with blending and my letter sounds that I'm learning. So you may have a child segmenting a sound, but you may have them do phoneme, grapheme, mapping as soon as they can. Even when students are just learning their letters, as soon as you have a vowel, they can start to build simple words. All right, I'm going to jam on through. So the basics of phonics, where we're having the trouble, often lies in the letter identification, being fluent with that, being the basic decoding and the basic inflectional morphology. So we know that's a huge determiner of my ability to read. Some of what I have here, and I'll show you when I stop sharing the screen. I was a kindergarten teacher. So when it comes to me being able to learn how to be fluent and solid with my understanding of that letter sound and using it to decode, that's the time in my life, I'm 5 years old, that I'm going to learn it. If I don't get it done well and cleanly, it's not going to set me up for success later. There's something I know Marianne Wolf, if you've heard of Marianne Wolf said this at a conference a few years ago, uh, talking about, I know you've heard drill and kill, and multiple exposures to build the visual word form area. So how I give practice to a student matters. I can't let them just do it sloppily, and just leave it right there, if that makes sense. All right, so letter formation, dictation, decodable text, all these types of activities will support across from K to 2. But letter formation, I'll say, if your program has a student just tracing the letter and gives them an opportunity, that's where your teacher move comes in. They need multiple successful opportunities to do something and map it to their visual word form area. Okay? And almost there. This is just a list of other activities related. Okay. When it comes to high frequency words, I know everyone is familiar with when we say the heart word technique. It's generally just different than when we were raised and when people were saying that we needed to memorize words, and we know that is not the case for how our brain learns to read. Drawing a student's attention to the letters and sound patterns that they have learned is important. And we were told the opposite, I know, growing up and as a young teacher. Yes, so let me I'm going to click through here, and we don't have to go into the breakout room. We will just stay here and ask. This is the list of information I said would be great if you are an out of classroom teacher, if you're supporting teachers, even if you're working with your own colleagues. Understanding how a student responded on those measures earlier, and not just how, where their score fell, and then also opening up the assessment detail to see the actual response patterns. The actual response patterns tell a story of what the student did in that 1 minute, and it tells you everything about where they are in that instructional hierarchy. Let's see. I put the little note at the bottom. So I know everyone's in a different role that's on the Zoom right now, but being very cognizant of collaborating with our peers, I'd say that. I don't want the student to come to me for additional support, and they were in your class and I'm doing a whole different routine and I'm using different terminology and a different order of steps. That for a student that's struggling, that is wreaking more havoc than helping. Okay, so that's one of the most important things I'd say, to make sure you support students in that way. All right. I got to the end. I was rushing along. I was like, okay, but all right. The summary of what we just talked through together, and I'm going to pause on the next slide for you to unmute and just share what your next step might be. But screeners they do not give us exactly what's happening with the student. They give us a general zone for concern, and for skills that we know we can teach and that are predictive. And for our littlest ones, this is really important, and gives us an insight into our tier 1. Those benchmark scores, we need to look under the hood and make sure we understand where a student is on their journey towards fluency. A student with a similar score can have a very different need than a student right next to them. Okay, so we want to make sure we talk about that, all the nuanced information. We want to give appropriate practice so that information moves from the short-term to the long-term memory, and collaborate with each other to make sure that we're consistent with our terminology and sequence of steps and everything we're doing. Okay. So here's what I wanted to have you unmute if you feel comfortable, or just think about on your own. I know I shared a lot, and this was a very brief session, but what next step might you do tomorrow? The fact that you're here is beautiful, but what might you do tomorrow that will help you support a K-2 student better tomorrow when it comes to responding to their screener data. You can unmute if you want to, or just think about it on your own.
I think tomorrow, or probably later today, since it's still pretty early here, I need to think about what questions, as it relates to student data, that I'm going to pose to site administrators that I'm meeting with, to identify what systems they have in place that will support the teachers to support the students. So looking at tier 1 instruction, I think that there are, we just recently got back our beginning of the year M-class data. And I believe there are some grade levels and some teachers who are going to have to shift their tier 1 instruction because they have over 70% of students are well below.
Mhm.
So
I was going to ask you a question, Rashida. You work with K-2, like you support the K-2 teachers. Do you have an idea which skill is it, or is it across the board?
I would say of the 19 elementary schools that I support, I'm going to focus on 7 of those schools. And looking at those 7 schools, it's primarily phoneme segmentation. And
Okay.
so looking.
And that's the grade 1 students, maybe?
Yeah, I would say K1.
K1, okay. Got it. That's excellent. Yeah, excellent. I mean, the kindergartners are just learning, like we want them to be getting it, but the first graders, they're supposed to have that down pat already. So that's a great thing to draw their attention to. Yes. Did you have anything else you wanted to share?
I don't want to take up all the space. I'll give other people, but I do have some other questions for
Okay.
you, just for
All right.
guidance.
Okay. Anybody else want to share what their next step might be?
Dr. Archie, something I'm thinking about in Oakland Unified, this is the first year, for screeners for all students. And I think that there's a bunch of retired teachers who are actually administering. So I'm just curious, so much of what you talked about is really like, how are we using the results to really inform instruction? And when it's not the teacher that's administering the screener, how are we communicating our observations and the information on the different skills sets and the different measures? That's one thing that I've been thinking about. And then I'm also thinking about, to what extent are the different subtests, what they measure and the skills and what to do for support at home. How might that be communicated with families across the board? I'm not quite sure. That's just something on mine. That's my next steps.
That's huge. The first thing you said, that's a big one. So it's beautiful. The community and educators, all hands on deck, help get the screener administered. But one thing my mentor, Dr. Stoller, always says that everyone has to have skin in the game. So if I have an assessment team coming to help get it done quickly, and I'm the classroom teacher, I still need to assess at least 5, 6, or 7 of my students. Otherwise, there's no meaning. And it's not on purpose. It just takes away that rich information we were talking about this during this whole session. All of those things you described that you would notice a child doing, their classroom teacher hasn't experienced it. And that teacher is the primary source of the core instruction. So just to remind people of that, all hands on deck, help get it done, but there has to be some skin in the game. I have to assess some of my students, and then we all have to sit down and meet to talk and share. The other one, you talked about the subtests to share with parents, just what we did today. Well, I've done a workshop similar to this for families, but getting teachers to, what I just said is, give teachers the opportunity to talk, have them do what we were doing today. Talk about the measure. Don't just say, okay, Renata is below benchmark. On what? Like, the teacher has to be able to say, she's below benchmark on this skill called phoneme segmentation fluency. Here's what the child is meant to do, and it helps them spell and da 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 da. And here's an activity you can do. Here's a little website where they can drag tiles. So for the teachers to be able to express better what it is to the parent, and instead of just saying that the child is below, um, and then some sort of little activity that's similar to what the child's doing. They're with us most of the day, the students. So the correction of it or the super duper high quality activities aren't necessarily happening at home, and we can't, that's outside of the locus of our control, right? But we want to be able to better express to a parent what's happening, why, and how important that skill is, and that it's important to get to school on time. Anybody else want to share before we finish up and have questions?
I was going to say, to the point, Dr. Archie, you just spoke to, one thing that's been helpful for our teachers is in the DIBELS platform, there's a tab that says Home Connection, and it provides a letter that teachers can use at parent conferences to inform like where the student is skill-wise and activities. So I know in one of our PDs, we had a few teachers like, well, I don't know what to tell a parent. I don't know how to speak to this. So teaching them how to use that home connection as a resource for parents, but even a tool for themselves to learn what the different skills are and mean, because we realize there's a learning curve there of teaching, supporting teachers to understand and learn about the science of reading. So that, Jen, with your question, has been helpful. Of course, it's not like an end all be all, but I feel like that's like one of our places we've started and supporting people to use the platform as a resource and not just for assessment.
Such a great call out. Thanks, Rashida.
All right. Anybody else? No? Okay. Well, if you want to unmute, go ahead, ask any questions. These are 3 books. One of them is not out yet, but when it comes to MTSS, this book came out in the spring, and Dr. Sarah Brown and Dr. Stoller. This one on the end, Lindsay Kamini, I'm sure you've seen her 7 Mighty Moves, the little scholastic book. And what she did, that's great here, because we don't want teachers out on the internets just grabbing anything like, oh, segmenting, decoding, and just getting random lists of words and things. She put together, it's a pretty thick resource book where, you can feel safe with the activities she has there associated with certain evidence-based practices we want to see in the classroom. This book is coming out in January, the one in the middle, and it is phenomenal. I had a chance to read the pre-publication copy, and it is everything we need. So Dr. Stoller, again, with Kate Wen, who's up in Ontario, Canada, have this book coming out. So look out for it. You can pre-order it now, okay? Please just unmute if you have any questions. I'm going to stop sharing.
Oh, can you share your screen so we can see those books that you're referencing?
I think Annette,
sorry. Did you see them?
share too. We could switch out the sharing if you want, and then we're also going to send this too.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Let's see the books.
I
Awesome.
do see Renata's. You're still sharing your screen.
Oh, she
Yes,
is?
you can see it, right? Yeah.
Oh, my.
So if you have any questions, please unmute. We can share again
Okay.
after questions.
Yeah, yeah.
You have a few closeout slides.
Yeah, we'll do some of the closeout sides. But can we just like show some love with our little emojis for the brilliance, the deep expertise, the huge heart, and the way that Dr. Archie just models amazing adult learning and just keeps us engaged. And despite the Zoom, mess up with the links, like we just are so grateful, Dr. Archie, that you have taken this time to share with us. I always learn is something new, everything. I was just going to say, and that's probably true when I'm with you. So thank you for that. If you all want some more Dr. Archie in person, Dr. Archie is coming back and speaking at the Literacy and Justice for All Symposium. This is the 2-day conference that we at the Oakland Literacy Coalition host in downtown Oakland. Y'all, I heard someone just call this the plain talk of the West Coast, but I would even say what's different than plain talk is that we really double down on equity and social justice in a non-performative way, along with Dr. Archie. Zaretta Hammond is going to be our keynote speaker. Dr. Susan Newman, for all you New Yorkers, she will be joining us as well. Marianne Wolf and the other featured speakers are on here too. Annette, if you don't mind putting the link to register, early bird tickets for Literacy and Justice for All ends on Halloween. And so if you haven't gotten your tickets to attend, please do so. You can just go to literacyandjusticeforall.org. I think I might have put the wrong link in before. And then for the feedback link, I put this in here just so we can really invite Dr. Archie and other brilliant speakers. Again, can you please just take 5 minutes to fill out this feedback link? Share what you appreciated about today's session, what you'd like some more of, and we just really thank you for your presence and your time. And I'll stop talking if Dr. Archie, if you did want to take some questions, if you have a moment, great. And if not, we will be sharing the slides and your contact information with folks as well.